The mountains don't forgive mistakes. Gideon Ashford learned that truth 6 years ago in a valley half a world away, where sand turned to glass under the Afghan sun and orders given in confidence became epitaphs carved in silence. Now driving through the Bitterroot Range on a cold March morning in 2025, he carried that truth like a stone in his chest. The pickup truck rattled over frozen gravel, its suspension complaining with every pothole. $47,000. That's what the Lindicaston Baiji owes a net cost. Every cent he had left after the VA payments dried up and the nightmares made sleeping in cities impossible. 40 acres of Montana wilderness. No neighbors. No questions. No one asking why a man his age lived alone with nothing but a dog and a duffel bag of memories he couldn't unpack. Beside him, Sergeant sat perfectly still in the passenger seat. The German shepherd's amber eyes tracked the tree line with mechanical precision, ears rotating like radar dishes, cataloging every sound the forest offered. 7 years old. 6 combat deployments. Twice awarded for valor. And like Gideon, medically retired with scars no one could see. Almost there, Sarge, Gideon said quietly. The dog's ear flicked once. Acknowledgement, not agreement. They passed a weathered sign, Red Haven. Population 847. The town appeared like a photograph from another era. Single stoplight, hardware store with paint peeling from wooden siding, a diner called Copper Creek that looked like it hadn't updated its menu since 1975. Gideon pulled into the gravel lot. His stomach reminded him he'd skipped breakfast in Missoula, too focused on the road, too anxious to reach the land before doubt could turn him around. Inside the diner smelled of coffee and bacon grease. A dozen heads turned when he entered. Small town radar. Stranger alert. He took a booth by the window. Sarge lay beneath the table, invisible to everyone, but hyper-aware of every person in the room. The waitress approached, 60 maybe, gray hair pulled back, name tag Dolores, eyes that had seen enough of life to stop being surprised by it. Coffee, please, and the breakfast sausage. She poured without spilling a drop despite studying him. You're the one bought the old Mercer property. Not a question. Ashford. Gideon Ashford. Dolores, everyone knows everyone here. You'll get used to it. She glanced under the table. That a working dog? Was. We both were. Something shifted in her expression. Understanding maybe, or respect. Coffee's on the house. Thank you for your service. Before Gideon could respond, she was gone. 10 minutes later, she returned with a plate. 3 sausage links, eggs, hash browns. She set a second small plate on the floor by the table. Sarge's head emerged. He sniffed the sausage once, then turned away. Dolores laughed. Picky eater. He ate military rations for 6 years, Gideon said. Bar's pretty high. The dog settled back under the table unimpressed. Gideon ate in silence, watching Red Haven through the window. Pickup trucks, American flags. People who probably knew their neighbors' names and histories going back 3 generations. The opposite of everywhere he'd lived since Afghanistan. As he paid, an older woman entered. Early 60s cardigan over a floral dress, carrying a canvas bag stuffed with books. Dolores brightened. Evelyn, this is Gideon Ashford. Just bought the Mercer land. The woman paused, something flickering across her face too quick to read. Evelyn Blackwood, town librarian. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm. Welcome to Red Haven, Mr. Ashford. Though I have to ask why that particular 40 acres, it's been vacant since the 60s. That's why, Gideon said simply. Evelyn studied him with the same intensity Dolores had, but longer. Assessing. Well, if you need anything, history of the area, county records, someone to talk to, libraries on Main Street. Open Tuesday through Saturday. Appreciate it. She left, but Gideon caught her glance back through the window as she walked away. Small towns, everyone watching, everyone. He climbed back in the truck. Sarge jumped in without command, settling into his seat like a soldier returning to formation. The drive to the property took 15 minutes on deteriorating Forest Service roads. When the GPS finally died, Gideon followed instinct in the survey markers he'd studied online. Then the trees opened up. 40 acres. Most of it sloped hillside covered in lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. A small clearing near the western edge where sunlight actually reached the ground. This would be home. Gideon killed the engine. Silence rushed in like water filling a hall. No cars, no voices. No city hum that vibrated in your bones until you forgot what real quiet sounded like. Just wind through pine needles, distant crow calls, the creak of tree trunks settling. Sarge exited the truck and stood motionless, processing the environment. His nose worked the air in short, efficient samples, cataloging, categorizing, searching for threat. After 30 seconds, his posture relaxed. Clear. Gideon unloaded supplies: tent, sleeping bag, cooler, toolbox. Everything he owned fit in the truck bed with room to spare. He spent the afternoon attempting to set up the tent. It didn't go well. The ground was uneven. The stakes wouldn't hold in the rocky soil. The rainfly hung crooked, no matter how many times he adjusted it. By 4 p.m., the structure looked less like shelter and more like a failed geometry experiment. Gideon stepped back, wiping sweat despite the cold. Sarge sat 10 feet away, watching. The dog's head tilted exactly 45 degrees to the left. His amber eyes moved from the tent to Gideon and back again. The judgment was silent but absolute. Not all of us went to engineering school, Sarge. The dog blinked. Once. Slowly. Disappointed. Gideon almost laughed. Almost. The sound died before it reached his throat the way laughter always did now. He tried again, reinforced the stakes with rocks, tightened every line. An hour later, the tent stood. Barely. Good enough. As twilight bled into the clearing, Gideon built a small fire. He heated a can of chili, ate half, gave Sarge the rest, mixed with kibble. The dog ate with mechanical efficiency, then settled by the fire. For the first time in 6 years, Gideon felt something almost like peace. Almost. The feeling lasted until 3:17 a.m. He jerked awake, heart hammering, hand reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there. The dream again. FOB Scorpion, July 2019. Temperature 112 degrees. Intel said the compound was clear. Gideon gave the order. Breach and clear. Standard entry. A Corporal Benjamin Matthews went through the door first. The IED turned him into vapor and sound. Gideon sat up gasping. Sweat soaked his shirt despite the near-freezing temperature inside the tent. Something warm pressed against his chest. Sarge. The dog had moved from his corner and now sat pressed against Gideon, solid and real. His muzzle rested on Gideon's sternum, not pawing, not whining. Just present. Grounding. Gideon's breathing slowed. He counted heartbeats. His own. Then Sarge's slower and steadier, like a metronome guiding him back. "Thanks, brother," he whispered. Sarge didn't move, just maintained the pressure, the connection. Eventually, Gideon lay back down. The dog remained close, a warm anchor in the dark. Sleep came again, thinner this time, but enough. Morning broke cold and clear over the Bitterroot Range on March 15th, 2025. Gideon woke to frost coating the inside of the tent and Sarge already standing at the entrance, staring out through the mesh. Not relaxed, alert. Gideon pulled on his jacket, olive field jacket, worn at the elbows, and his boots. "What is it?" The dog's ears were fully erect, rotated northeast. His tail hung low and motionless. Working posture. Gideon stepped outside. The clearing looked unchanged. Trees, frost, morning light slanting through branches, but Sarge didn't move. "Show me." The command released something in the dog. He moved immediately, not running, but advancing with purpose, nose low, tracking, something Gideon couldn't see or smell. They moved through the forest. Pine needles crunched under Gideon's boots. His breath fogged in the cold air. After 10 minutes, Sarge stopped. Dead halt, every muscle locked. Body tense, ears forward. Gideon moved beside him and saw it. The hillside had collapsed, not recently. The exposed earth showed weathering lichen already growing on displaced rocks. But significant. A landslide maybe 30 feet wide, cutting a diagonal scar down the slope. Last night's storm must have been fiercer up here than down in the valley. And at the bottom half, buried in mud and tangled roots, something that didn't belong. Metal, rust red and curved. Gideon descended carefully, using exposed roots for handholds. As he got closer, the shape resolved. A rail car. Not a piece. Not debris. An entire Northern Pacific Railway freight car 40 feet long and 10 feet high, buried at a 45-degree angle, as if the earth had swallowed it and the storm had coughed it back up. The logo was still visible through the rust, NP 1952. Gideon stopped breathing. He pulled out his phone, opened the USGS map he'd downloaded. The nearest railroad active or abandoned was Missoula, 43 miles west. The old line that used to run through the Bitterroot area had been torn up in 1961, 64 years ago. So how did a rail car from 1952 end up buried in the middle of 40 acres of forest miles from any track? He turned to Sarge. The dog sat 3 feet from the exposed metal, staring at it, not approaching, not investigating, refusing. "What do you see, boy?" Sarge's eyes shifted to Gideon, then back to the rail car. Warning, Gideon approached alone. The side of the car was partially exposed, revealing a door. The hinges were eaten through with rust, but the frame held. He gripped the handle, what was left of it, and pulled. The door shrieked, metal on metal. The sound echoed through the forest, sending birds scattering from nearby trees. Inside was darkness. Gideon pulled his maglite from his belt and clicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing a space that looked less like a freight tour and more like a makeshift office. Wooden benches lined one wall. A filing cabinet lay toppled in the corner, papers scattered like fallen leaves. A chalkboard hung crooked on the far wall, white chalk writing still faintly visible. He stepped inside. The air smelled of rust and old paper and something else. Chemicals, maybe. Decades old, but still present. The chalkboard showed a diagram, a building layout, rooms labeled with abbreviations, prod store disp. At the top in careful letters, Silver Ridge Chemicals, layout B. Gideon moved the light. On the wall beside the chalkboard, a large map hung behind cracked glass. The Bitterroot Range, hand-drawn contour lines, and 17 red X marks scattered across the mountains. Each X labeled Contamination Zone Alpha through Sigma. Each X dated 1953. His pulse quickened. This wasn't a forgotten railcar. This was a vault. He moved deeper. The filing cabinet had vomited its contents across the floor. He knelt examining papers with gloved hands. Federal letterhead, U.S. Department of Labor Office of Industrial Safety. Dates 1952, 1953. Subject lines Industrial Accident Investigation. Worker Fatality Reports. Chemical Exposure Incidents. 17 names. 17 deaths. All employed at Silver Ridge Chemicals. All died between January 1952 and May 1953. All listed cause of death, respiratory failure. Chemical burns, acute organ failure. Gideon's hands shook slightly. This wasn't just history, this was evidence. He searched further, moving aside rotted fabric and broken glass until his light caught something under the floorboards. A panel, misaligned, intentionally loose. He pried it up. Underneath, wrapped in wax canvas, was a steel box, 18 inches by 24 inches. Maybe 8 inches deep. Heavy, 35 pounds at least. He carried it to the door where light was better, used his multi-tool to work the corroded latch. It took 5 minutes. When it opened, the smell of old leather and preservative oil rolled out. Inside, a journal, leather-bound, brown. The pages thick and yellowed but intact. On the first page, in careful handwriting, property of Nathaniel Whitmore, engineer, Silver Ridge Chemicals. Beneath the journal documents, official reports, photographs, and a letter. Single page, handwritten. The paper so old it felt like fabric. Gideon read it standing in the doorway of a buried rail car while a German shepherd sat guard outside and the Montana wilderness held its breath. Thomas, if you find this rail car, know your father never abandoned you. They burned our home. Your mother, Sarah, died in the flames. I hid you in the mountains, but they hunted us like animals. This rail car was their secret. They moved chemical waste at night, dumping it in the mountains where no one would look. I stole it, filled it with proof, and buried it in the very place they poisoned. The truth must outlive us both. I love you more than breath. Nathaniel Whitmore, August 17th, 1953. Gideon read it twice, then looked at the photograph tucked beneath the letter. A man and a boy, standing by a river. Summer light. The man's hand rested on the boy's shoulder. The boy, maybe 5 years old, held a carved wooden horse. On the back, in the same handwriting, Nathaniel and Thomas, July 1953. 1 month before the letter. Gideon's throat tightened. He knew this story. Not the details, but the shape of it. A man trying to protect his child. A system trying to silence him. A desperate attempt to preserve truth for a future he wouldn't live to see. He stepped out of the railcar, journal and letter in hand. Sarge stood immediately, moving to his side. Gideon looked at the dog. We just opened something 72 years old, Sarge, and I think someone's still scared of it. The dog's ears rotated, focused on something beyond the clearing. Then he growled, low, steady, controlled. Not at the railcar, at the forest behind them. Gideon turned slowly, nothing visible, no movement, no sound beyond wind and birds. But Sarge didn't growl without reason. Someone was watching, or had been. Gideon secured the journal and letter in his jacket, zipped it tight. Come on, boy. We're going to town. The Red Haven Public Library occupied a brick building on Main Street between a hardware store and a shuttered movie theater. Small, one-story, American flag out front. Gideon pushed through the door at 10:42 a.m., Sarge at his heel. Evelyn Blackwood looked up from the front desk. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of the dog, then settled into something like understanding. Mr. Ashford, didn't expect to see you again so soon. I need to look at county records, specifically anything related to Silver Ridge Chemicals. 1950s. Her expression shifted. Careful now. That's specific. May I ask why? Gideon pulled out the photocopies he'd made of the letter and the first page of the journal. He'd left the originals locked in the truck. He placed them on the desk. Evelyn read. Her face went pale. Dear God, she whispered. Nathaniel Whitmore. You know the name. Everyone over 50 in this town knows that name. She looked up. Mr. Ashford, where did you find this? On my property, in a rail car buried in the hillside. She stared at him, processing. Then she stood abruptly. Come with me. She led him to the back of the library down a narrow staircase into a basement archive. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls organized by decade. She went straight to 1950 to 1959, pulled a drawer, fingers walking through files until she found one. The tab read Whitmore Nathaniel, Incident Report. She pulled it, laid it on a table under fluorescent light. Inside were newspaper clippings. Yellow, brittle, Red Haven Daily, May 15th, 1953. Fire kills local woman, husband and son missing. The article detailed a house fire at 2 a.m. Sarah Whitmore, age 32, perished. Nathaniel Whitmore, 35, and son Thomas, 5, were unaccounted for. Red Haven Daily, June 8th, 1953. Search for missing father and son called off. Sheriff's Department concluded after 3 weeks that Nathaniel and Thomas likely died of exposure in the mountains. No bodies recovered. Case closed. Evelyn flipped through the file. There should be more here. The initial investigation, interviews, federal inspector reports. She counted pages. This file has 9 pages, but look at the page numbers. Gideon looked. Pages 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 12, 14, 18, 19. 10 pages missing. Someone had removed them. Evelyn checked the logbook on the desk. Handwritten entries of who accessed which files and when. Her finger stopped on one entry. March 18, 2024. Senator Warren Caldwell. Request Whitmore file 1953. Duration 47 minutes. Gideon felt something cold settle in his chest. Caldwell, like the foreman mentioned in the journal. Evelyn nodded slowly. Harrison Caldwell Sr. owned Silver Ridge Chemicals. He died in 1987. His son Warren is currently a state senator, up for re-election this November. And he pulled this file last year. For 47 minutes. They looked at each other. Mr. Ashford, Evelyn said quietly, whatever you found in that railcar, someone very powerful doesn't want it seen. Gideon thought of the growl, the sense of being watched. I need to find Thomas Whitmore, or whoever he became. Evelyn hesitated, then reached for another filing cabinet. This one required a key she wore on a chain around her neck. Adoption records are sealed, but I've been librarian here for 40 years. I know things. She pulled a thin folder, inside a single form. Montana State Child Services, 1954. Thomas Whitmore, age 5. Entered state custody June 1953. Placed with Brennan Family Salmon, Idaho, September 1954. Name legally changed to Cole Brennan. An address. 15 years old, but something. 478 Two River Bend Road, Salmon, Idaho. Salmon's 2 hours east, Evelyn said. But Mr. Ashford, be careful. If Caldwell knows you're asking questions, he already knows. Her face confirmed what he suspected. Then you should leave, tonight. Take whatever you found and go to the FBI, the state police, someone with authority. Gideon thought of Matthews, thought of all the times authority had failed to arrive in time. I need to tell this man his father didn't abandon him first. He's lived 72 years believing a lie. Evelyn studied him, then reached under the desk and handed him a business card, her personal cell number written on the back. Call me if you need anything. And Mr. Ashford, I think Nathaniel Whitmore would be glad you found his rail car. He waited a long time for someone who'd care. Outside, Sarge waited by the truck. Gideon climbed in, started the engine. Road trip, Sarge. We're finding Thomas Whitmore. At the word trip, the dog's ears perked. He stood moved to the passenger side door and stared at Gideon through the window. Ready. Gideon opened the door. Sarge jumped in with practiced efficiency, almost smiled. Almost. He pulled onto Main Street, heading for the interstate. In his rearview mirror, a black Chevy Suburban pulled out from a side street. Tinted windows, no front plate visible. Following, Sarge's head turned. He stared out the back window, body tensing. The growl started low in his chest. Warning, Gideon kept his speed steady, didn't react. but his hands tightened on the wheel. Someone knew, someone was watching, and someone wanted to make sure the truth Nathaniel Whitmore buried stayed buried. But Gideon had learned something in 6 years of trying to outrun his mistakes. Some things you can't leave behind, some things you have to face. He pressed the accelerator and headed east towards Salmon, Idaho, carrying a 72-year-old secret and a dog who refused to quit. The mountains watched them go, and in the forest behind Red Haven in a rail car that had waited 7 decades, the truth began to breathe again. The highway stretched east through mountain passes where snow still clung to the high peaks despite March's arrival. Gideon kept the speedometer steady at 65, eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. The black Suburban had fallen back after Missoula, but never disappeared completely. Always 3 or 4 cars behind. Professional distance. The kind of surveillance that didn't want to spook its target, just track it. Sarge sat rigid in the passenger seat, head turned toward the back window. Every muscle taut, ready. "I see them too, boy." The dog's ear rotated toward Gideon's voice, but his eyes never left the mirror. 2 hours into the drive, Gideon's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. "Ashford? Mr. Ashford, this is Evelyn Blackwood. I'm calling from my personal line." Her voice carried an edge he hadn't heard before. Stress, maybe fear. "I'm listening. After you left, I did more research. Warren Caldwell's campaign finances show significant donations from industrial development firms. But more concerning, I found something in the library archives from 1953. A photograph." Gideon waited. "It shows Harrison Caldwell Sr. at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for Silver Ridge Chemicals. But in the background, there's a younger man. The caption identifies him as legal counsel. I had the Historical Society enhance it." She paused. The kind of pause that precedes something heavy. "Mr. Ashford, that legal counsel is now a federal judge. Still serving, still alive, Judge Richard Blackwood. And his name is on one of the documents you showed me, the ones approving Silver Ridge's waste disposal permits." Gideon's grip tightened on the wheel. "Any relation to you?" "My father, he's 89 years old." Silence hung heavy between them. "I'm sorry," Gideon said finally. "Don't be. I didn't know, but now I do. And Mr. Ashford, if my father was involved in covering this up, he needs to answer for it, just like everyone else." "Evelyn, this goes deeper than one senator. People with power have spent 70 years keeping this buried. Please be careful." The line went dead. Sarge growled. In the rearview mirror, the Suburban had closed distance. Gideon took the next exit, a small service station outside a town called Drummond. He pulled in, parked near the building where security cameras would catch everything. The Suburban drove past, didn't stop, but Gideon caught a glimpse through the windshield. 2 men. Suits. Not construction workers or ranchers. Professional. Watchers. He filled the tank, bought coffee and a bag of jerky for Sarge. The dog ate 3 pieces with mechanical efficiency, then resumed his position by the truck door. Waiting. They reached Salmon, Idaho at 3:47 p.m. on March 15, 2025. The town sat in a valley where the Salmon River carved through mountains like a silver thread. Smaller than Red Haven. Quieter. The address Evelyn had given him led to a residential area on the north side. Modest homes, older construction. The kind of neighborhood where people stayed for decades. Number 4782 was a single-story ranch with white paint that had faded to gray. A fence surrounded a small yard. Flower beds showed the remnants of last year's garden. A truck sat in the driveway. Ford F-150, 20 years old but well-maintained. Someone was home. Gideon parked at the curb, sat for a moment gathering himself. This was the part he hadn't planned. What do you say to a 77-year-old man who spent his entire life believing his father abandoned him? How do you hand someone the truth when it comes wrapped in tragedy? Sarge watched him. Patient, steady. "No backing out now," Gideon muttered. He climbed out. Sarge followed without command, staying close to his left leg. The walk to the front door felt longer than the 2-hour drive. He knocked. Footsteps inside. Slow. Careful. The door opened. The man who stood there was shorter than Gideon expected. Maybe 5'9", thin. Age had carved deep lines around his eyes and mouth. His hair was white and thinning, but his eyes pale blue, almost gray. Those eyes matched the boy in the photograph exactly. "Help you," his voice was rough. Smoker's rasp. "Mr. Brennan Cole, Brennan." Suspicion flickered across the old man's face. "Who's asking?" "My name is Gideon Ashford. I've found something on my property in Montana. Something that belonged to your family." "Don't have family in Montana." Gideon pulled the photograph from his jacket. the one of the man and boy by the river. He held it out. Cole Brennan's face went absolutely still. His hand came up slowly trembling and took the photograph. He stared at it. 5 seconds. 10. His knees buckled. Gideon caught him, one arm under his shoulder, steadying him. Easy, I've got you. Cole's breathing came in short gasps. His eyes never left the photograph. Where? His voice broke. Where did you get this? Can we go inside? This is going to take some time. Cole nodded mutely. Let Gideon guide him back through the door and into a small living room. Furniture from the 80s. Television on mute showing a game show. Everything neat but worn. The old man collapsed into a recliner, still holding the photograph. Gideon sat on the couch across from him. Sarge positioned himself between them, eyes moving from one man to the other. Mr. Brennan, Cole, what do you remember about your father? Cole's hands shook. Nothing. I remember nothing. They told me. He stopped, swallowed. They told me he ran, after the fire, after my mother died. His voice turned bitter. They said he left me, abandoned me in the mountains. That I was lucky the sheriff found me half dead from cold and starvation. Who told you that? Everyone, social workers, the Brennans when they adopted me. Everyone in Red Haven looked at me like I was the son of a coward. He looked up at Gideon, eyes wet. I spent 67 years hating a man I couldn't even remember. Hating a ghost. I even changed my name to forget him. Became Cole Brennan because I couldn't stand being Thomas Whitmore. Gideon leaned forward. Cole, your father didn't run. He didn't abandon you. Then where is he? I think he's dead. Probably died in 1953, but not from exposure and not from cowardice. He pulled out the letter, handed it to Cole. The old man read it once, twice. A sound escaped him. Not quite a sob, more like something breaking inside that had been held together too long by the wrong kind of glue. He called me Thomas, Cole whispered. No one's called me Thomas since the hospital, since before the adoption. Nay, Gideon waited, let him process. Finally, Cole looked up. You said you found this on your property. In a rail car, buried in the hillside, hidden for 72 years. A rail car. Your father worked at Silver Ridge Chemicals. They were dumping toxic waste in the mountains. He discovered it, tried to stop it. They killed your mother to silence him, but he didn't run. He fought, and he died protecting you and trying to preserve the truth. Cole's face hardened. Who? Harrison Caldwell. He owned the company, but Cole, he's dead, has been since 1987. Then why does this matter now? Because his son is still alive, still in power. Warren Caldwell, state senator, and still trying to keep your father's evidence buried. Cole stood, moved to the window, stared out at the quiet street. 72 years, he said. I've been Cole Brennan for 72 years. Became a carpenter, married, lost my wife to cancer in 2003, retired. And the whole time I thought my real name belonged to a man who didn't want me. He turned back to Gideon. Where is this rail car? My property, about 40 miles from Red Haven. Take me there. Cole, it's dangerous. Someone's already watching me, following me. The old man's jaw set. I don't care. I spent my whole life running from a name, from a history I thought was shame. If my father fought for something, if he died protecting me and trying to expose the truth, then I'm done running. He walked to a closet, pulled out a worn canvas jacket. Let's go get my father's story back. Sarge stood, looked at Gideon. Ready. Gideon felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. This was about giving a man back his name, his history, his father. Some missions you didn't choose. They chose you. All right, Gideon said, but we do this my way. Careful, smart. I'm 77 years old, son. Careful and smart are all I've got left. They loaded into the truck. Cole in the passenger seat, Sarge in the back. The old man kept touching the photograph, running his fingers over the image like he was trying to pull his father through time by force of will alone. The drive back to Montana was quieter. Gideon watched the mirrors. The Suburban didn't reappear, but that didn't mean they weren't being tracked. As they crossed back into Montana, Cole spoke. I remember something. Not much, but something. Gideon waited. I remember being cold, so cold and dark, my father's coat wrapped around me. He said to stay quiet, like hide and seek. He'd come back for me. Cole's voice cracked. But he didn't come back. And I waited. I don't know how long. Then there were lights, voices, sheriff's deputies. They found me under some kind of tarp or covering, hypothermic, dehydrated. Where were you? I don't remember. They said it was a cave or a shelter somewhere in the mountains near Red Haven. Gideon's mind turned. Cole, what if that shelter was the rail car? What if your father hid you there while he went to get help or supplies? Then why didn't he come back? Because they caught him or killed him, but he made sure you'd survive first. He counted on someone finding you before it was too late. The old man was quiet for a long time. Then I want to see it, the rail car. I want to see where my father made his last stand. They reached Red Haven as the sun touched the western peaks. Gideon drove straight through town, not stopping, eyes checking for tails. Nothing obvious. But as they turned onto the Forest Service road leading to his property, he noticed fresh tire tracks in the mud. Recent, within the last few hours. Someone had been here. He pulled the truck off the road 50 yards from his cabin, cut the engine. Stay close. Stay quiet. Cole nodded. Sarge was already out, nose working the air body low. They approached on foot. The cabin looked undisturbed, but the trail leading toward the rail car showed boot prints. Multiple people. Heavy treads. Not hikers. Gideon's hand moved instinctively to his hip, where a sidearm should be, but wasn't. Old habits. They followed the trail in silence. Sarge led body tense, moving with the economical grace of a predator. When they reached the landslide area, Gideon saw it. The railcar door stood open. Wide open. He'd left it closed. Someone had been inside. Wait here, he told Cole. Like hell. The old man's voice carried steel Gideon hadn't heard before. Fine, but behind me. They approached the railcar. Sarge entered first, clearing it the way he'd been trained, but this time the dog paused at the threshold, body language different. Less warning, more reverence. Like he understood this was sacred ground. After a moment, Sarge stepped inside carefully, respectfully. Gideon followed. His eyes adjusted to the gloom. The space had been searched, not ransacked, but methodically examined. Papers had been moved. The filing cabinet drawers pulled fully open. Even the floorboard where he'd found the steel box had been pried up further, but nothing taken. Whoever had been here was looking for something specific, or confirming something. Cole entered behind him, stopped just inside the door. His breath caught. I know this place, he whispered. Gideon turned. Cole moved forward like a man in a trance. His hand reached out, touched the wooden bench. I was here. I sat here. Right here. His fingers trembled on the wood. My father put me under this bench, wrapped me in his coat. It smelled like tobacco and sawdust and sweat. He said to count to 100, then count again. Keep counting until he came back. Tears ran down the old man's face. I counted to 1,000, then I fell asleep. When I woke up, he was gone. He turned to Gideon. This is where he left me, to save me. And he did save you, Cole. You're alive. You survived, because he put you here and made sure someone would find you. Cole walked deeper into the railcar, saw the map on the wall, the contamination zones marked in red. 17, he said. He was trying to save 17 places. 17 places where people died, where chemicals poisoned the land. The old man's hand formed a fist against the wall. They killed him for this, for trying to stop them from murdering the land and the people. Yes. And his son is still in power, still covering it up. Warren Caldwell, state senator. Yes. Cole turned. His pale blue eyes had gone hard. Then we finish what my father started. We expose every damn thing. A sound outside. Both men froze. Sarge moved to the door, every muscle tense. Low growl, warning. Gideon motioned Cole to stay back. He moved to the entrance, staying in shadow. Through the trees, movement. Two men, same suits he'd seen in the Suburban. Moving toward the railcar with purpose. Not law enforcement. No badges, no announcement. Private security. Or worse. Gideon's combat training kicked in. Assess. Calculate. React. Two hostiles. One ally who was 77. One K9 trained but aging. No weapons except a multi-tool and a flashlight. Bad odds, but odds he'd faced before. He turned to Cole, spoke quietly. There's a trail behind the railcar. Leads back to the cabin through thick brush. Take it, now. What about you? Sarge and I are going to buy you time. Go. When you reach the cabin, get into the truck. Keys are in the ignition. Drive to town. Find Evelyn Blackwood at the library. Tell her everything. I'm not leaving you. Cole, Gideon's voice went flat. Command voice. Your father died protecting you. Don't make me do the same. Go. The old man hesitated, then nodded. He squeezed Gideon's shoulder once and disappeared out the back of the rail car. Gideon watched him vanish into the brush, gave him 30 seconds. Then he stepped out of the rail car. The two men stopped. Closer now, Gideon could see they were younger than him, early 40s, fit, moving with the confidence of people used to compliance. The taller one spoke. "Mr. Ashford, we need to have a conversation. About what? About property you've found that doesn't belong to you. Everything on this land belongs to me. I have the deed." The shorter one smiled, not friendly. "Historical artifacts found on private property fall under state jurisdiction. We're here to secure them. Show me a warrant." "Don't need one. We're not law enforcement." "Then you're trespassing." The tall one sighed. "Mr. Ashford, let's not make this difficult. We know you have documents from the rail car. We know you visited the library. We know you drove to Idaho. You've been following me. Protecting interest, there's a difference. Whose interest? People who would prefer the past stay in the past. People who understand that some truths do more harm than good." Gideon felt Sarge tense beside him. "I don't agree." The shorter man's hand moved toward his jacket. Sarge exploded into motion. 70 pounds of trained aggression launched at the man before the gun, and Gideon was certain now it was a gun could clear leather. The impact took the man to the ground. Sarge's jaws clamped on his wrist. Not mauling, controlling. The tall man reached for his own weapon. Gideon moved. 6 years of inactivity hadn't erased muscle memory. He closed the distance in 3 strides, drove his shoulder into the man's center mass, sending him sprawling. The gun clattered into the leaves. Gideon kicked it away. Behind him, the shorter man screamed as Sarge maintained pressure on his wrist. "Call him off! Call him off!" Gideon stood over the tall man. "Sarge, hold." The dog adjusted, still controlling the wrist but no longer increasing pressure. "Who sent you?" Gideon asked. The tall man glared. "You're assaulting private security. You drew weapons on private property. I'd call that self-defense." He pulled out his phone, started to dial 911. The tall man's expression changed. "Wait, don't. We can work this out." "I'm listening." "Mr. Ashford, you don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about one old chemical company. The families involved, the money, the political connections, it goes up levels you can't imagine. Try me. Warren Caldwell is just the visible piece. There are federal judges, corporate executives, people whose entire careers are built on what happened in the 50s staying buried. So you admit there's a conspiracy." The man's jaw tightened. "I admit there are powerful people who want this to go away, and they will make it go away, with or without your cooperation. Is that a threat?" "It's reality." Gideon looked at Sarge. The dog's eyes never left the man beneath him. "Here's my reality," Gideon said. "A man named Nathaniel Whitmore died trying to expose the truth. His 5-year-old son lived 72 years thinking his father abandoned him. That ends now." He dialed 911. "Wait," but Gideon was already speaking. "This is Gideon Ashford at 47200 Forest Service Road, Red Haven. I have 2 armed men trespassing on my property. Send sheriff's deputies." He hung up. The tall man stood slowly. "You just made a mistake. Not the first, won't be the last." The shorter man had gone quiet. Sarge still held him, but gently now, waiting. In the distance, sirens. The response was fast, too fast, which meant someone in authority was already paying attention. 2 sheriff's cruisers appeared on the trail within minutes. 4 deputies. Sheriff Linda Harrigan was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back and eyes that missed nothing. She assessed the scene in seconds. "Mr. Ashford, you called this in?" "Yes, ma'am. These 2 men were on my property. Armed, made threats." She looked at the 2 men. "You boys want to explain?" The tall one pulled out identification. "Private security. Carson and Associates. We're investigating potential theft of historical materials." "On whose authority?" "Client privilege." Sheriff Harrigan's expression didn't change. "This is Montana. We don't have client privilege for private security. You're armed. You're on private land without permission. You need to leave." "Sheriff." "Now." The 2 men exchanged looks, then nodded. Gideon gave Sarge a hand signal. The dog released the shorter man's wrist and returned to Gideon's side. The men walked to a vehicle parked down the trail, the black Suburban. As they climbed in, the tall one looked back at Gideon. "This isn't over." The Suburban drove away. Sheriff Harrigan turned to Gideon. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" "Sheriff, how much do you know about Silver Ridge Chemicals?" Her face changed, just slightly, but enough. "I know it's been closed since 1962. I know there's been rumors for decades. And I know asking questions about it is a good way to make your life complicated. I found evidence in a rail car on my property. Evidence that Harrison Caldwell was dumping toxic waste and covering up deaths. She was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Ashford, I believe you, but I also know that digging into this is dangerous for both of us. I understand. Do you? Because those men work for people with resources, money, lawyers, influence. They can make you disappear legally, bury you in litigation, destroy your reputation. And if that doesn't work, she didn't finish. Didn't need to. I'm not backing down, Sheriff, she sighed. Didn't think you would. You've got that look. What look? The look of a man who's already decided which hill he's willing to die on. She walked back to her cruiser, paused. For what it's worth, my grandfather worked at Silver Ridge, died of lung cancer in 1960. He was 42. She drove away. Gideon stood alone in the clearing with Sarge. His phone rang. Cole. I'm at the library. Evelyn's here. And Gideon, you need to hear this. What? She found more records. Hospital records from 1953. My mother didn't die in the fire. Gideon's world tilted. What? She died 3 days later, in the hospital, and the attending physician noted something in the autopsy report. Chemical burns, internal, not from the fire. They poisoned her. Yes. And Gideon, there's more. She was pregnant. 8 weeks. The phone felt heavy in Gideon's hand. Cole, I was supposed to have a brother or sister. They killed them both. The old man's voice broke. We're not just exposing corporate malfeasance, Gideon. We're exposing murder. Multiple murders, premeditated, cold-blooded murder. Gideon looked down at Sarge. The dog looked back, still ready, still steady. Cole, lock the library doors. Don't let anyone in except me. I'm coming. He started walking back to the cabin. His truck was still there, but now there was something else. A note under the windshield wiper. He unfolded it, typed, no signature. Your service record shows you led a team in Afghanistan. You gave an order that got Corporal Benjamin Matthews killed. How would that look in the press? How would the families feel knowing you're playing hero now? Walk away. Gideon read it twice, then crumpled it. They'd done their research. Found his pressure point. Found the shame that woke him at 3:17 a.m. in a cold sweat. But they'd made a mistake. They thought shame would stop him. What they didn't understand was that shame was exactly what drove him now. He'd failed Matthews, failed to save him. He wouldn't fail Nathaniel Whitmore, or Cole, or the 17 families poisoned by corporate greed. He climbed into the truck. Sarge jumped in beside him. Let's go finish this, boy. The engine roared to life. And as he drove toward Red Haven, toward the library, where an old man was learning his father was a hero, Gideon Ashford felt something he hadn't felt in 6 years. Purpose. The kind worth fighting for. The kind worth standing for when walking away would be easier. In the rearview mirror, the forest disappeared into gathering dusk. Somewhere in those trees, a rail car held 72 years of silence. But silence was breaking, and the truth patient and relentless was finally coming home. The Red Haven Public Library sat dark except for a single light in the back room. Gideon pulled the truck into the alley behind the building at 7:23 p.m., killing the headlights before the engine died. Sarge was out before the door fully opened, nose working the perimeter, cataloging every scent the evening wind carried. Clear. Gideon knocked twice on the back door. A specific rhythm Evelyn had described over the phone. The deadbolt slid. The door cracked open. Evelyn Blackwood's face appeared pale in the dim light. Thank God. Come in. Quickly. Inside, the archive room had been transformed into something between a research center and a bunker. The long table was covered with documents, photographs, maps spread across every available surface. Cole sat in a chair near the far wall, the journal open in his lap, reading by the light of a desk lamp. He looked up when Gideon entered. His eyes were bloodshot, but his gaze was steady. You all right? Gideon asked. No, but I will be, after we finish this. Evelyn locked the door behind them and moved to the table. I've been cross-referencing everything. The journal entries, the hospital records, the federal reports. Gideon, this is bigger than we thought. She spread out a timeline she'd constructed on butcher paper. January 1952, Silver Ridge Chemicals begins industrial production. Within 3 months, workers start showing symptoms. Respiratory distress, chemical burns, nausea. Her finger moved down the timeline. June 1952, first death, Robert Palmer, age 34, listed cause pneumonia, but the autopsy notes mention lesions consistent with chemical exposure. July through December 1952, 6 more deaths, all workers, all listed as natural causes or accidents. January 1953, Nathaniel Whitmore files a formal complaint with the U.S. Department of Labor. A federal inspector is assigned, named Gerald Morrison. February 1953, Inspector Morrison visits Silver Ridge, finds multiple violations, orders immediate remediation and fines totaling $50,000, a significant sum in 1953. She paused, finger hovering over a circled date. March 12, 1953, Inspector Morrison dies. Single vehicle car accident. Drove off a mountain road near Lolo Pass. Weather report that day, clear skies, dry roads, visibility excellent. Gideon felt cold spread through his chest. April 1953. Nathaniel continues documenting. According to the journal, he's collecting soil samples, photographing dump sites, interviewing workers who are too scared to speak publicly. He knows Morrison's death wasn't an accident. May 14, 1953, 9:47 p.m. fire reported at Whitmore residence. Sarah Whitmore severely burned, transported to Red Haven Community Hospital. May 17, 1953, 4:23 a.m. Sarah Whitmore dies. Hospital record lists cause of death as complications from burn injuries. But the autopsy, Evelyn pulled a yellow document from the pile, was conducted by Dr. Howard Mills. His notes are clinical, but damning. She read aloud, patient presented with second and third degree burns, covering approximately 30% of body surface area, primarily torso and upper extremities. However, upon internal examination, extensive chemical burns were discovered in the esophagus, stomach lining, and small intestine. Pattern inconsistent with smoke inhalation or thermal injury. Chemical analysis of stomach contents revealed traces of sulfuric acid and cadmium chloride. Cole's voice came from across the room, rough and barely controlled. They didn't just burn our house. They poisoned my mother. Made sure she couldn't survive to tell what she knew. Evelyn nodded grimly. The autopsy also notes Sarah was 8 weeks pregnant. May 17, 1953. Same day, Nathaniel doesn't come forward to claim his wife's body or check on his son. Sheriff's Department launches search, but according to the journal, she tapped Nathaniel's handwriting. He already knew coming forward would mean death. He'd hidden Thomas in the rail car 2 days before the fire. August 17, 1953. Final journal entry. Evelyn's voice softened. Nathaniel writes that he's running out of supplies. He's been making nighttime trips to abandoned homesteads scavenging food and water, but patrols have increased. He knows they're hunting him. He writes, I must attempt one final resupply run. If I don't return, may God guide someone to find Thomas and this truth. She looked up at Gideon. He never made another entry. We can assume he was caught or killed attempting that supply run. How did they find Thomas? Gideon asked. Sheriff's report from June 3, 1953. Evelyn pulled another document. Anonymous tip called in the location of a child's crying. Deputies found Thomas Whitmore hypothermic and severely dehydrated in a covered depression near Old Ridge Trail. No mention of a rail car in the report. Because they didn't recognize it, Cole said quietly. It was buried. I remember now my father had covered the entrance with branches and tarps. To anyone searching it would have looked like natural shelter or an old mining shaft. The deputies took you to the hospital. You recovered. But with both parents dead and no next of kin, you entered state custody. The Brennans adopted you 4 months later. And changed my name, Cole added. Made me Cole Brennan. Told me my father was a coward who ran away. That narrative became my life. Evelyn moved to another section of the table. But here's what makes this a current conspiracy, not just historical tragedy. Look at this. She spread out 3 documents. This is the original Silver Ridge Chemicals ownership structure from 1952. Harrison Caldwell, senior majority owner. But there are 3 silent partners. All prominent businessmen. She pointed to names circled in red. James Westbrook, his grandson, is now CEO of Westbrook Industrial Development. Richard Blackwood, my father, now a federal judge. And Michael Torres, his daughter, married into the Reynolds family, who own half the commercial real estate in western Montana. These families have been interconnected for 70 years, and they've been quietly protecting each other. Warren Caldwell's campaign, funded heavily by Westbrook Industrial and Reynolds Properties. Judge Blackwood has ruled in favor of both companies multiple times in environmental litigation. Gideon saw the web now. Not just one corrupt company, an entire network of power and money built on buried truth. They've been profiting from the contaminated land, he said. Exactly. After Silver Ridge closed in 1962, the contaminated sites were sold at steep discounts, supposedly worthless land. But the buyers were shell companies traced back to these same families. They sat on it for decades, letting people forget. Then starting in the 1990s, they began development, residential subdivisions, commercial parks, all built on poisoned ground they never properly remediated. Cole stood abruptly. So families are living on contaminated land right now. Children playing in yards with cadmium and sulfuric acid in the soil. The levels have decreased significantly over 70 years, but yes, and the families who developed those sites knew. They had the original contamination maps. They built anyway. Then we expose all of it, Cole said, voice hard. Every name, every connection, every development built on poison. Cole, Evelyn said gently, these people have resources we don't. Lawyers, money, political power. We have the truth. Sometimes that's not enough. It was enough for my father. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Gideon turned from the window where he'd been watching the street. We need insurance. Multiple copies of everything. Sent to people who can't be bought or intimidated. I've already started, Evelyn said. I have a contact at the Montana Historical Society, another at the EPA regional office, and a cousin who's a producer for the New York Times. Good, but we need more. We need a sound outside. Sarge's head snapped toward the front of the library. Body tensing, ears forward. Low growl. Warning. Gideon moved to the front window, staying in shadow. 3 vehicles had pulled up to the curb, the black Suburban, and 2 police cruisers. Not Sheriff Harrigan's vehicles. Montana State Police. Evelyn, is there another way out? The basement has an old coal chute. From when the building was heated with coal, it opens to the alley. Show me. They moved fast. Evelyn led them down the narrow stairs to the basement. In the far corner behind boxes of old books was a metal chute angled up to street level. It hasn't been used in 40 years, Evelyn said. I don't even know if it opens. Gideon examined it, rusted shut, but the hinges looked intact. Outside, someone pounded on the library's front door. Ms. Blackwood State Police. We have a warrant to search the premises. Gideon looked at Cole. Can you climb? The old man's jaw set. Watch me. Gideon braced his back against the wall and kicked the chute door, once, twice. The third kick, it gave way with a shriek of metal. Cold night air rushed in. Go, Gideon said to Cole. Evelyn, you too. This is my library. I'm not running. They'll arrest you for obstruction. Let them. I've got a lawyer and 40 years of community standing. You get Cole somewhere safe. More pounding upstairs, louder. Ms. Blackwood, open the door or we're coming in. Evelyn gripped Gideon's arm. The documents are digitized. Cloud storage. Multiple servers. Even if they take the physical evidence, they can't erase it all. Where? She handed him a flash drive. Backup, just in case. Password is written inside the journal cover. Page 187. Cole had already climbed into the chute, old joints protesting, but determination overriding pain. The sound of the front door splintering echoed through the building, boots on the floor above. Sarge went next, scrambling up the chute with surprising agility for his age. Gideon followed, pulling himself up and out into the alley. They emerged behind a dumpster just as flashlight beams swept the basement windows. Cole was breathing hard but moving. Where now? The forest, my property. It's the one place they've already searched. They won't expect us to go back. They moved through the alley, staying low, using parked cars for cover. Behind them, voices. Radio chatter. Basement's empty. They went out the coal chute. All unit suspects are on foot. Lock down the perimeter. Ashford is wanted for obstruction of justice and theft of historical artifacts. Brennan is wanted for questioning. Approach with caution. Gideon's truck was still in the alley but surrounded now. No way to reach it. He pulled out his phone. 1 bar of signal. Dialed a number he'd saved earlier. Sheriff Harrigan answered on the second ring. Ashford? Sheriff, I need help. State Police just raided the library. They're looking for me and Cole Brennan. Pause. What did you do? Found evidence of 72 years of murder and cover-up. Now someone with authority wants it buried again. Another pause. Longer. Where are you, Tun? Rather not say on an open line. Smart. Listen to me carefully. I can't help you officially. But my cousin owns a hunting cabin 15 miles north of Red Haven. Off-grid road past mile marker 7. There's a key under the 3rd porch step. It's stocked. You can lay low there. Why are you helping me? Because my grandfather deserved better than dying at 42 from poison someone else put in the ground. Get moving. And Ashford, don't make me regret this. She hung up. Gideon turned to Cole. Can you walk 15 miles? Can you carry me if I can't? Despite everything, Gideon's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. They moved north, staying off roads using the forest as cover. Sarge led his training, taking over finding paths invisible to human eyes in the darkness. The temperature had dropped into the 30s. Cole's breathing grew labored after the first mile. At the second mile, Gideon called a halt. Cole collapsed against a tree, chest heaving. I'm slowing you down. Leave me. Come back when it's safe. Not happening. I'm 77 years old. I can't. Your father spent 4 months hiding in a rail car to keep you alive. I can help you walk 15 miles. Cole looked at him, then nodded. They continued. The forest at night was a different world. Sounds amplified. Every branch snap became a footstep. Every rustle became pursuit. But Sarge never faltered. His ears mapped the darkness, sorting threat from noise with the precision of years. At mile 5, they heard it. Helicopter, distant but approaching. Searchlight sweeping through the trees ahead. Down, Gideon hissed. They dropped into a depression behind a fallen log. Sarge pressed against Cole, keeping him warm and still with his body heat. The helicopter passed overhead. The searchlight turned the forest into a strobing nightmare of light and shadow, every tree casting multiple moving shadows. It moved on. But now they knew this wasn't just local police. This was coordinated, resourced. Someone was pulling serious strings. They waited 10 minutes after the helicopter disappeared before moving again. Mile marker 7 appeared like salvation just before midnight. The turnoff to Grid Road was barely visible, overgrown with brush that scraped against their jackets. The cabins sat another quarter-mile in. Small, log construction, solar panels on the roof, definitely off-grid. Gideon found the key exactly where Sheriff Harrigan said it would be, under the third porch step, wrapped in a plastic bag. Inside the cabin was basic but functional. Propane stove, wood stove for heat, canned goods on rough-hewn shelves, bottled water, even a first aid kit. Cole collapsed onto a cot in the corner. Give me 5 minutes. Take 10. I'll secure the perimeter. Gideon did a full circuit of the cabin with Sarge, both of them falling into the familiar rhythm of tactical assessment. No recent tracks in the surrounding area. No signs of surveillance. No glint of optics in the tree line. When he returned, Cole was sitting up reading the journal again by flashlight, fingers tracing his father's handwriting. There's an entry here from July 1953. He writes about hearing me laugh, says it's the only thing keeping him sane in the darkness. The only reminder that there's still good in the world worth protecting. The old man's hands shook. I don't remember laughing. I don't remember him at all except from that photograph. And that kills me, Gideon, that he died for a son who can't even remember his face without that picture. Can't remember the sound of his voice. Can't remember anything except cold and fear. Gideon sat across from him on a wooden bench. Memory isn't just what we recall, it's what shapes us. You became a carpenter, built things with your hands, created things that last. That's his legacy in you, Cole. That's him living through you even when you didn't know his name. How do you know? Because men who destroy don't raise sons who create. The fact that you build instead of tear down, that's proof he was a good father. That's proof his love took root, even in the few years you had together. Cole was quiet for a long moment, turning the journal in his weathered hands. Then what about you? What's your story, Gideon? What brings a man to Montana to disappear? Gideon stiffened. Not important. You ran into danger for me, for a stranger. Twice now. I think it's important. Outside wind moved through the pines with a sound like distant ocean. Sarge lay by the door, eyes half closed, but still alert, still on duty. Afghanistan, Gideon said, finally, the word tasting like sand and copper. 2019, I gave an order, told my team to breach a compound. Intel said it was clear. High-value target inside. Standard entry protocol. He stopped, swallowed. It wasn't clear. There was an IED rigged to the doorframe, pressure-sensitive, military-grade. My second-in-command went through first. That's protocol. Second-in-command breaches. Commander follows. His voice went flat, emotionless, the only way he could tell it. Corporal Benjamin Matthews, 26 years old, engaged to a teacher from Columbus, Ohio. Her name was Rachel. They were getting married that fall. She'd already picked out a dress. The explosion killed him instantly, vaporized everything from the waist up. I was 3 feet behind him, caught some shrapnel, some burns, lived. Cole waited. I came back to the States 6 months later, got medically retired for PTSD, couldn't sleep in cities, couldn't be around crowds, couldn't close my eyes without seeing Matthews going through that door. Couldn't stop wondering what would have happened if I'd gone first, if I'd made a different call, if I'd questioned the intel instead of trusting it. So you bought land in Montana, came out here to disappear, to stop failing people, to stop being responsible for lives I couldn't protect. But you didn't disappear. No. Why not? Gideon looked at Sarge. The dog's ear rotated toward his name, even though he appeared to be sleeping. Him. Every time I tried to give up, he'd do something. Refused to eat until I ate. Refused to sleep until I slept. Dragged me outside when I'd been inside too long. Forced me to keep moving when all I wanted was to stop. He reached down, scratched behind the dog's ear. Sarge leaned into the touch. He saved my life more times after Afghanistan than during it. Pulled me back from edges I didn't even know I was standing on. Cole studied him with those pale blue eyes that had seen 7 decades of pain. So this isn't just about my father's story. This is about yours too. About whether you're the man who failed Matthews or the man who saves people. I can't save Matthews. He's gone. No, but you can save the truth about my father. You can save 17 families from never knowing why their grandfathers died. You can save whoever's living on contaminated land right now from the same fate. Gideon met his gaze. I failed Matthews. I can't fail your father too. Cole nodded slowly, understanding passing between them without words. 2 men carrying ghosts. 2 men trying to make peace with the past by fighting for the present. Then we don't sleep, Cole said. We plan, because he checked his watch, 8 hours we're meeting a reporter who can help us blow this wide open. And between now and then, powerful people are going to do everything they can to stop us. But neither of them slept despite the exhaustion pulling at their bones. Gideon sat by the window watching the forest while Sarge dozed fitfully by the door, ears twitching at every sound. Cole read the journal cover to cover. Again, committing his father's words to memory, reclaiming a history stolen by lies. At 4:47 a.m. as false dawn began to gray the eastern sky, Cole spoke. There's something I need to do. Before we meet the reporter, before this goes public and I can never have a private moment with my father again. What? I need to go back to the rail car one more time. I need to stand where he stood. I need to tell him I understand now, that I know he didn't run, that I'm proud to be his son. Gideon looked at the determination in the old man's eyes, the same fire that made Nathaniel Whitmore steal a rail car and fill it with truth. Cole, it's too dangerous. They're watching my property. I don't care. I spent 72 years thinking he was a coward who didn't want me. Now I know he was a hero who died protecting me. I need to say goodbye properly. I need to tell him face to face, even if he can't hear, that his son understands. The weight of it pressed down on Gideon, the need to honor the dead, to make peace with fathers and failures. He understood that need more than Cole knew. All right, but we do it my way, fast, careful, in and out before sunrise. They left the cabin at 5:03 a.m., moving through pre-dawn darkness. The forest was at its quietest now, that dead hour before birds wake and the world stirs. Sarge led them on a route that avoided roads and clearings, moving through dense brush and over rocky terrain that wouldn't hold tracks. The dog moved like a ghost, silent and sure-footed, despite his years. They reached Gideon's property at 5:37 a.m. No vehicles visible in the growing light, no signs of surveillance. But that didn't mean they weren't there. Gideon had learned in Afghanistan that the best surveillance is invisible. They approached the rail car from the north, using the landslide's bulk for cover, moving in silence. Cole stopped at the entrance. The door hung open just as they'd left it yesterday. I need to go in alone. Gideon started to protest. Please, this is between me and my father. After a moment, Gideon nodded. Cole entered the rail car. Gideon and Sarge took up position outside, watching, waiting. Sarge's body tense, every sense tuned to the surrounding forest. Inside, Gideon heard Cole's voice, quiet, speaking to a man who'd been dead for 72 years, but whose love still echoed in the words he'd left behind. Dad, it's Thomas, your son. I'm sorry it took so long to find you. I'm sorry I believed what they told me. I'm sorry I hated you for most of my life. A pause, the sound of a hand touching wood. But I know now, I know you fought. I know you loved me more than your own life. I know you counted every day in that darkness, not in despair, but in hope. Hope that I would survive. Hope that someday the truth would matter. His voice broke. I'm going to finish what you started, Dad. I'm going to make sure everyone knows your name, knows what you did, knows that Nathaniel Whitmore was the bravest man in Red Haven, that you stood up when no one else would, that you died protecting children and truth and everything good. Silence, then I love you. I'm proud to be your son. I'm proud to carry your name again. A sound like a hand slapping wood. Final. Definitive. Rest now. Your work is finished, but mine is just beginning. Cole emerged 5 minutes later. His eyes were wet, but his face held something Gideon hadn't seen before. Peace, the kind that comes from laying down a burden you've carried too long. I'm ready, Cole said simply. They started back toward the cabin, the sun just beginning to touch the highest peaks, turning them gold. They'd made it 50 yards when Sarge stopped. Every muscle locked, body rigid, ears forward. Not warning. Alert. From the trees ahead, movement. Multiple figures emerging from concealment. Don't move, a voice amplified by bullhorn. Federal agents, you're surrounded. Lights blazed from 6 positions. Men in tactical gear stepped into view, weapons raised but not pointed. Ready but not threatening. Yet. Hands behind your head. Both of you, Gideon raised his hand slowly. Easy, we're not armed. On your knees now. Cole started to comply, but his legs buckled. 77 years and 15 miles of night hiking took their toll. He collapsed. Gideon moved to help him. Don't move. Stay where you are. He's 77 years old and just walked all night. He needs help, not commands. A figure pushed through the tactical team, not FBI, not in tactical gear. Senator Warren Caldwell. He looked nothing like the polished politician from the photographs Evelyn had shown them. His suit was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. No tie, his hair uncombed, his face haggard with exhaustion or stress or both. Mr. Ashford, Mr. Brennan, this ends now. Your father killed innocent people, Cole said from the ground, voice still strong despite his collapse. You're just continuing the cover-up, just like your father covered up murder with money and influence. My father made mistakes, in a different era under different standards. But dragging this into the light now serves no purpose except revenge. And revenge doesn't bring back the dead. Justice does, Cole said. Justice gives them names again, gives their families answers, gives their grandchildren the right to know why their grandparents died young. Justice, Caldwell's voice rose, control slipping. 17 families got death benefits, disability payments. Their children went to college on Caldwell Foundation scholarships. Their grandchildren own homes because we've been quietly paying for my father's sins for 7 decades. We couldn't bring back their loved ones, but we tried to make their lives better. We tried to make it right. While keeping the truth buried, Gideon said. While building developments on contaminated land you never properly cleaned. While letting children play in yards with poison in the soil. The contamination levels are within acceptable limits now. 70 years of degradation. You had the maps. You knew exactly where it was concentrated. You built anyway. Caldwell's composure cracked like ice under pressure. Because what's the alternative? Destroy my family's name, end my career. Shut down development that employs thousands. For what? For satisfaction. For the hollow victory of exposing sins committed by people who are already dead. No, Cole said, pulling himself to his feet with Gideon's help. For the truth. Because my father didn't die so you could buy silence with blood money. He died believing the truth mattered more than comfort, more than reputation, more than politics. Your father died accomplishing nothing, Caldwell shouted, the dam finally breaking. The chemicals were cleaned up in '62. The company closed. The damage stopped. His sacrifice changed nothing except leaving you an orphan and giving Red Haven a ghost story. The words hung in the cold morning air. Cole stepped forward, leaning on his cane but standing straight. It changed me because now I know what real courage looks like. I know what it means to stand alone against power. I know that my father was everything I thought he wasn't. And Senator, I know that you, for all your money and influence and quiet payments, you'll never be half the man he was. Caldwell recoiled as if struck. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone. Made a call. Do it, he said into the phone. Just 2 words. He hung up. What did you just do? Gideon asked, combat instincts flaring. Ensured this ends, one way or another. In the distance, a new sound, helicopter. But not a police helicopter. The sound was different, lighter, news helicopter. It descended into the clearing near the railcar downdraft, whipping through the pines, sending pine needles flying like snow. A woman jumped out before it fully touched down. Native American mid-40s carrying a camera. Behind her, a videographer with professional equipment. Senator Warren Caldwell, she shouted over the rotor noise. I'm Rachel Redwing with Salish Kootenai Indigenous News Network. We're broadcasting from Flathead Reservation's sovereign land. You have no jurisdiction here. Caldwell's face went white. This is federal property. Check the original survey markers at 0500 this morning. Eastern boundary of this property overlaps Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribal land by 217 yards. Has since 1855. We're standing on sovereign land. Federal jurisdiction doesn't apply. She turned to Cole camera already recording. Mr. Brennan, I understand you have a story about your father, about Nathaniel Whitmore and what happened at Silver Ridge Chemicals in 1953. The world is listening. Cole looked at Gideon. Gideon nodded. And Thomas Whitmore, who'd been Cole Brennan for 72 years, who'd spent a lifetime believing he was the son of a coward, stepped in front of the camera. The sun broke over the ridgeline behind him, turning the railcar gold. And he spoke. For 23 minutes he spoke. He told the story of a father who discovered his company was poisoning the land and the people, who tried to stop it through proper channels, who was threatened, who watched a federal inspector die in a suspicious accident, who collected evidence even as the danger closed in. He told the story of a mother who died not from fire but from poison, who was 8 weeks pregnant when they killed her with sulfuric acid disguised as an accident. He told the story of a 5-year-old boy hidden in a rail car while men with guns hunted his family. A boy who counted to 1,000 waiting for his father to return. A boy who lived 72 years believing he'd been abandoned. He told the story of 17 workers who died for corporate profit. 17 families who deserved to know why their fathers and grandfathers died young. 17 names that deserved to be remembered. The camera captured every word, every tear. Every moment of truth breaking through 7 decades of silence. When Cole finished, Rachel turned to Caldwell. Senator response. The man stood frozen, trapped between the truth and the lies that built his life. Trapped between the father he'd spent 40 years defending and the reality he'd always known but never admitted. Finally, he spoke. His voice was different now, quieter, emptied of polish. My father, Harrison Caldwell, was a complex man. But what he did, there's no complexity in murder. No nuance in poisoning workers and covering it up. No gray area in burning down a house with a pregnant woman inside. He pulled an envelope from his jacket with shaking hands. This is my resignation from the United States Senate, effective immediately. I'm calling a press conference for noon today. I'll tell them everything about the cover-up, the contamination, the deaths, all of it. He pulled another document. This is the deed to all Caldwell family land in Montana, 2,347 acres. I'm transferring it to a trust for the families affected by Silver Ridge Chemicals and their descendants. No restrictions, no conditions. Rachel's camera captured it all. Caldwell looked at Cole. Mr. Whitmore and I call you that deliberately because you should never have had to hide your father's name. I'm sorry. For everything. For your father, your mother. The sibling you never got to meet. The childhood stolen by my family's crimes. He stepped forward, extended his hand. After a moment, Cole took it. Your father destroyed lives, Cole said, but you don't have to be him. You get to choose which legacy you continue. And Senator, he gestured at the resignation letter, the deed. This is the first honest thing your family's done in 70 years. Caldwell's eyes were wet. Why do you extend grace I don't deserve? Because my father taught me something even though I can't remember him. He taught me that truth isn't about revenge. It's about light, about making sure darkness can't hide anymore. You standing here admitting it, that's light. That's truth winning. Rachel approached, microphone extended. Senator Caldwell, one question. What changed? What made you decide to confess? Caldwell was quiet for a long moment. Then he pointed at Gideon. Last night I got reports. 2 children, Lucas and Emma Harding, ages 9 and 6, went missing near Old Ridge Trail. Mr. Ashford and his dog found them in contamination zone Delta. One of the 17 sites my father poisoned. They were trapped near a leaking chemical drum that's been there since 1953. Still toxic, still dangerous. He swallowed hard. Mr. Ashford ran into an active wildfire to pull those children out of poison my father put in the ground 72 years ago. His dog. He looked at Sarge, was injured saving them, took a burning tree branch to the shoulder protecting them. Gideon's head snapped towards Sarge. The dog stood steady, but Gideon saw it now the way he favored his left side slightly. The matted fur on his shoulder. Blood dried dark against black fur. When did early this morning, Caldwell said. You've been running. You probably didn't notice. But that dog saved 2 children from my father's sins, still killing, still poisoning. He turned back to Rachel's camera. I watched footage of that rescue. Watched this man risk his life for strangers. Watched his dog nearly die, protecting children from poison my family put there. And I realized my father never did that. He never risked anything for anyone except himself and his money. He built an empire on shortcuts and lies and the deaths of good people like Nathaniel Whitmore. His voice hardened into something like steel. I've spent 45 years defending him, making excuses, hiding behind different era and business practices of the time, and quiet restitution. But it's all bullshit. My father was a murderer, and I've been his accomplice by silence. He looked at Gideon and Cole. You're right, both of you. The truth matters. It matters more than my name, more than my career, more than my comfort. He turned to the federal agents who'd surrounded them. I'll cooperate fully with any investigation, whatever you need. It's time past time for the truth to come out. All of it. The helicopter lifted off 27 minutes later, carrying the story that would break on national news by noon. Gideon knelt beside Sarge, examining the injury he'd somehow missed in the chaos of the night. The shoulder was swollen, the fur torn where the branch had struck. Not catastrophic, but serious. The dog had walked 15 miles on it without complaint, without slowing, without ever letting Gideon know. Because that's what Sarge did. Endure, protect, keep moving. You stubborn, loyal fool, Gideon whispered, throat tight. Why didn't you tell me? Sarge looked at him with those amber eyes, blinked once because the mission wasn't finished yet. It is now, brother. Mission complete. Time to rest. He looked up at Caldwell. Where's the nearest veterinarian? I'll have my people arrange transport. Best animal hospital in Missoula, whatever he needs. I'm going with him. Of course. As they waited for the vehicle, Caldwell called Cole sat on a fallen log beside Gideon and Sarge. That dog of yours, he said quietly. He's the reason we're standing here. The reason my father's story is being told. He's the reason for a lot of things. What will you do after today? After this is over? Gideon looked at the rail car gleaming gold in the risen sun, looked at the forest that had hidden it for 7 decades, looked at Sarge still alert despite pain, still on duty, despite injury. I think I'll stay, build that cabin properly, maybe help clean up those contamination sites, maybe work with the families who lost people, make sure they get answers, make sure Nathaniel's evidence turns into action. Cole smiled. Your father would have liked you. He trusted soldiers, trusted people who kept their word even when it cost them everything. I think I would have liked him too. They sat in silence as the sun climbed higher, turning the Bitterroot Range into a cathedral of light. 2 men, 1 dog, 1 buried railcar, and a truth that refused to stay buried. 6 weeks later, Gideon stood on the porch of his completed cabin, watching morning light filter through the pines. Real walls now, real roof, glass in the windows, a wood stove that actually heated the interior. Progress. Sarge lay in a patch of sunlight, left shoulder, fully healed, finally allowing himself to rest. The surgery had been successful. 8 weeks of recovery, the vet said. 6 weeks in the body was already itching to work again, already watching the tree line with that old focus. But different now, calmer, like he'd finally accepted that the mission was complete, that they could rest. Gideon's phone buzzed. Text from Cole. Coming up tomorrow with the reporter. They want to do a 6-week follow-up piece. That okay? Also bringing someone special. You'll see. Gideon looked at Sarge. The dog's tail thumped once against the porch boards. Agreement. He texted back, yeah, come on up. Coffee will be ready. The aftermath had unfolded faster than anyone expected. Warren Caldwell's resignation dominated news cycles for a week. His press conference, where he detailed everything, held nothing back, answered every question, became the most watched political event of 2025. 3 corporate executives resigned in the following days. Westbrook Industrial's CEO, Reynolds Properties chairman, the CFO of a development company that had built subdivisions on contaminated land. Judge Richard Blackwood retired from the federal bench 72 hours after the story broke. No charges were filed due to statute of limitations, but his legacy was destroyed. The law school that bore his name quietly removed the signage. His daughter, Evelyn, released a statement supporting the victims and donating her inheritance to the cleanup fund. Evelyn Blackwood herself was released after 6 hours of questioning by state police. No charges filed. She returned to the Red Haven Public Library to a standing ovation from 200 townspeople who'd gathered to support her. Sheriff Linda Harrigan faced an internal review, but was cleared when tribal authorities confirmed she'd acted within legal bounds, directing Gideon to sovereign land. She was later elected county sheriff in a landslide. The two private security contractors from Carson and Associates were charged with assault, illegal surveillance, and obstruction of justice. They accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony about who hired them. The testimony implicated 6 more individuals in the cover-up, but most importantly, the families. 17 families, some now in their 4th generation, received formal notification, received compensation from the Caldwell Trust, received apologies from the state of Montana, received their ancestors' names vindicated. Some donated portions of their compensation to environmental cleanup. Others set up college funds for great-great-grandchildren who would grow up knowing their family history included heroes, not victims. All of them received copies of Nathaniel Whitmore's journal. All of them learned that someone had fought for them when fighting meant death. The Bitterroot contamination zones were designated EP, a Superfund sites. Cleanup would take a decade, but it had begun. Residential areas built on contaminated land were tested. 3 subdivisions required remediation. Families were relocated during cleanup housing costs covered by the Caldwell Trust. Not one family bore the financial burden of corporate crimes committed before they were born. And in Salmon, Idaho, a 77-year-old master carpenter legally changed his name back. Business cards now read, Thomas Nathaniel Whitmore, Master Carpenter, son of a hero. He'd taken to wearing a small metal badge on his work jacket, engraved with the words, Truth Outlives Lies, N.W. 1953. Gideon heard Cole's truck before he saw it, the familiar rumble of that old F-150 climbing the Forest Service road. But there was a second vehicle behind it, a newer sedan. Cole emerged from his truck moving easier now that he'd had time to recover from that 15-mile night march. He waved. From the sedan stepped Rachel Redwing and her videographer, and someone else, a woman, late 70s, silver hair, warm eyes. She walked with Cole toward the cabin, and as she got closer, Gideon saw it. The same pale blue eyes, the same shape to her face. Gideon, Cole called out, I want you to meet someone. This is Dorothy Palmer. Her grandfather was Robert Palmer, the first worker who died at Silver Ridge in 1952. Dorothy extended her hand. Mr. Ashford, thank you for everything. I just found what was already there. No, you chose to care. You chose to fight. That's rare. That's precious. She turned to Sarge, who'd stood and moved to Gideon's side. And this must be the famous Sergeant. The dog sat at attention, allowing her to scratch his ears. My grandson, he's 8, asked if he could meet the hero dog who saved those children from the poison. I told him maybe someday. Gideon smiled. Bring him by. Sarge likes kids. As if on cue, the dog's tail wagged twice. They spent the afternoon on the porch. Rachel interviewed both Cole and Gideon for the follow-up piece. Asked about the cleanup progress, the legal proceedings, the impact on Red Haven. But mostly she asked about Nathaniel. Cole talked about reading his father's journal for the 100th time and finding new details, new moments of humanity in the fear. How his father wrote about Thomas's laugh, about the way his son said daddy with a slight lisp, about bedtime stories and carved toys and all the small moments that make a life. He wasn't just a whistleblower, Cole said. He was a father, a husband, a man who loved his family more than his own safety. That's what I want people to remember. Not just that he exposed crimes, but that he was good. Fundamentally, deeply good. Dorothy talked about her grandfather, about how her mother grew up without a father, told he'd died of pneumonia, never knowing the truth. About the relief of finally understanding why he'd been taken so young. It doesn't bring him back, she said, but it gives him meaning. It gives his death purpose. And it gives us the right to be angry at the right people, instead of just being sad. When Rachel finished filming, they sat in comfortable silence watching the sun track across the sky. Cole finally spoke. There's something I want to show you, all of you. He walked to his truck, returned with a wooden box. Simple construction, beautiful grain. I've been working on this for 6 weeks. He opened it. Inside was a scale model of the rail car, perfect in every detail. Even the map on the wall, even the journal on the bench. It's for the Montana Historical Society. They're creating an exhibit about Silver Ridge and the workers who died, about my father, about all of it. This will be the centerpiece, Vamo. Gideon examined the craftsmanship, the precision, the love evident in every joint. It's beautiful, Cole. It's remembrance. It's making sure this can't be forgotten again. Rachel looked at both of them. What do you think Nathaniel would say if he could see all this, if he could see his story finally told? Cole considered the question for a long time. I think he'd say it was worth it. All of it. The fear, the hiding, the sacrifice. Because it mattered. Because truth mattered. Because his son, his voice broke slightly, his son finally knows he was loved. The sun touched the horizon, painting the mountains in gold and amber. Gideon felt something settle in his chest. Something like peace, not the absence of pain, not forgetting Matthews or the failures that still woke him at night, but the presence of purpose, the knowledge that sometimes broken people can help fix broken things, that sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to fight for the living, that sometimes redemption doesn't look like forgetting the past, it looks like facing it and choosing to do better. Sarge leaned against his legs, solid and warm. Good work, partner, Gideon murmured. Mission complete. The dog's tail thumped. Agreement. As the visitors prepared to leave, Cole pulled Gideon aside. I'm going to the rail car tomorrow to install a plaque. Just a simple one, marking the site, making it official. Would you come with me? Of course. The next morning, they stood together at the rail car as the sun broke over the Bitterroot Range. The plaque was brass, weatherproof, mounted on a stone cairn Cole had built. In memory of Nathaniel Whitmore, 1918 to 1953, engineer, father, truth teller. The truth must outlive us both. Here he made his stand. Here his courage echoes still. Below that 17 names, the workers who died, their dates, their ages, remembered. Cole touched the letter's fingers, tracing his father's name. Rest now, Dad, your work is finished. But because of you, ours has just begun. They stood in silence as morning light filled the clearing. Two men who'd found each other through tragedy, who'd found purpose in uncovering truth, who'd learned that the past never really dies, it just waits for someone brave enough to bring it into the light. Behind them, the railcar stood silent, no longer a tomb, a monument, to truth, to courage, to a father's love, and to the understanding that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight costs everything, especially then. So, epilogue, sometimes miracles don't arrive as thunder splitting the sky. They arrive quietly, as a dog who refuses to step inside a railcar warning you of danger you can't yet see, as a storm that uncovers what needs to be found, as an old man who drives 2 hours to reclaim a father stolen by lies, as a librarian who risks her career to protect truth, as a sheriff who remembers her grandfather and chooses justice over safety, as the moment you decide to stay when leaving would be easier, as the choice to stand when sitting would be safer. Nathaniel Whitmore fought alone in 1953. He died believing his truth might never be heard, that his sacrifice might fade into silence and forgotten names. But truth doesn't die, it waits. For someone brave enough to listen, for someone loyal enough to stand, for someone broken enough to understand that redemption isn't found in forgetting the past, it's found in facing it. In our lives, we all face moments like these. When silence is easier than speaking, when walking away is safer than staying, when the cost of doing right seems higher than we can pay, but sometimes all it takes is one faithful companion who sits down and refuses to move, who reminds us that some hills are worth defending, some truths are worth telling, some fights are worth fighting. Not because victory is guaranteed, but because the alternative is living with the weight of silence. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing truth despite it. May you find faithful companions on your journey. May you have the strength to stay when running is easier. May you honor the truth tellers who came before. And may you become the kind of person who refuses to let silence win. Because the world needs more people like Nathaniel Whitmore, like Thomas Whitmore, like Gideon Ashford, and like every German shepherd who ever refused to abandon their post. The truth is patient, the truth is persistent, and the truth, when finally spoken, sets everyone free. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he guide your steps through fear and darkness. May he place faithful companions on your path when you need them most. And may you have the courage to honor the truth when silence would be easier. Amen.